All right, this one is about characters, how to portray a character, um, which might be useful. I don't know. It depends on what your goals are in life, right? Do you want to ever play a character? It's helpful if you want to make something with a character in it. If you can play it, then you always have somebody to play the character. That's actually literally how I got started acting. Was that I wanted to make movies. And I was like, well, if I can act, then I always have someone to make a movie with. So I kind of learned to act just to always have somebody that could act. But anyway, characters. So I posted something earlier on Twitter, um, and it was about what characters are. I'll explain. So you normally in your own skin. Me, I'm not a character. I'm a person. There's a difference. I'm me. I know everything that I know. Okay. A character doesn't. Um, if I'm going to even just play myself, I can't play myself fully because then I'm not a character. I have to turn off light switches in the house that is my brain, so to speak, in order to play a character. I have to forget a lot, which is funny because people think of like playing a role and like needing to memorize lines. They think of what they need to remember. What you should really do as an actor to play a character or to write a character and embody that as you're writing it is remembering how much this character doesn't know. Now, if you're writing like, I don't know, some sort of story where there's some sort of intrigue and mystery, it's very easy to keep track of that because you're like, well, the detective hasn't solved this mystery. So that's something big that they don't know, and they don't know it for the vast majority of the book or film or whatever, and then they know it towards the end and they solve it, right? But that character, that detective doesn't know everything else. That's what I'm saying. We as humans, we know so much, you know, we think about so much, and characters don't. Characters have only what they're dealing with. David Mamet used to say that there's no such thing as a character. That's kind of a social construct, or rather just a construct of telling a story. It's just something you buy into to further along the story, much as Alfred Hitchcock to, refers to it as a plot device, the MacGuffin. You know, when he talks about the MacGuffin, he's talking about just whatever's furthering the story. You know, we have to get those plans. The we can't let the plans fall into the wrong hands, so we need to get those plans. That would be a MacGuffin. Um, but David Mamet takes it one step further and is like, no, no, no. All those characters, all those people talking, all those people moving around, uh, that's a device as well. I think he has a point. You got to remember too. First of all, you should absolutely read David Mamet's book, True and False. It's like one of the best books you could ever read on acting. Um, if you read one book on acting, I would say that that's the one. Um, but the thing you have to remember about David Mamet is that a lot of his theories about performance acting, uh, this is in response to what actors are usually told. They're usually told you need a backstory, you need to flesh this out, you need to know this character inside and out, blah blah blah. You have, even if the writer's like, no, fuck you, just say your lines. You as an actor need to be your prepared self and do all this work that nobody's asking you to do. So a lot of what David Mamet says is in response to that of like, yeah, that's all busy work and unnecessary and just know your lines. as I think it's Cagney who says, uh, "Look the other fellow in the eye and tell the truth." David Mamet's just like, know your lines, speak clearly, know your marks. That's about it. I do think that that's just about it, but let's talk about my theory, which is the character thing. So, if you're entertaining people comedically, dramatically, whatever, you have to, let's say you're cast for a role, right? You were cast for a reason. They liked you for the role. They didn't cast you because they wanted you to change everything about yourself. They liked something about you in that role. So I don't know why I always use these guys, but it's just a good shorthand. But like Jonah Hill, Michael Cera, you know, they're plucked out of their lives and they're put into these comedic films most often, because Michael Cera fits in there and Jonah Hill fits in there. You know, we're not taking Daniel Day-Lewis and putting him in Superbad, even though he's a great actor. Some would say he's a better actor than Michael Cera, or some would say Daniel Day-Lewis is a better actor than even Jonah Hill. But he's wrong for the role. You got to be right for the role. That's all that matters. And you have to trust that if you're cast as in a role, it's for a reason. So you have to give of yourself in some way to the role. So what do you give? You give a ganked, neutered, diluted, tunnel vision version of yourself. Again, even if you're playing yourself, you have to. Because for some reason, I don't know why, I think it's just the nature of art. The second the character can do anything, it ceases to be art. Much as like in a video game, if you could go everywhere and do anything, it stops being a video game. Chess, if without the confines of the board, it stops being chess. If you can go anywhere and do anything in chess, it's not chess anymore. So, in that same way, that's kind of how you have to approach it for your own self when you're playing a character. You don't know as much and you can't do as much. Who are you now? You're the character. So, Jerry Lewis, who I got really into last year, because I never really got him. I only saw like weird. My exposure to him was very limited, as most people's exposure to him is of my age and a little bit older and a little bit younger. In that, like, he was massively famous. It's just I came in at the tail end of it, and any glimpse I saw of him, I just didn't really get the humor. I didn't really find that. I didn't really find him funny. I didn't understand why he was so revered. Um, but I just deliberately was just like, I'm going to get into Jerry Lewis. I'm just going to watch a lot of Jerry Lewis. And I ended up really liking what I watched, and now he's one of my favorite individuals who has ever existed in entertainment. He was ahead of his time in a lot of ways. But Jerry Lewis, a lot of what irritates people about him is that he's a very intelligent person and can be a little erratic and emotional in interviews. And it can be a little disarming when he wants to be serious and people just want him to be silly and Jerry, quote in quotes. Um, so he's a good example because when he plays, you know, characters in his films and he's just doing his thing, people expect him to, it's kind of like wind him up and let him go type thing. When he's on, so to speak, you know, that's him. And then when he's off, he's off. Much in the same way, like, to a certain extent, I'm performing when I'm doing these videos, but really I'm just being me. I'm just being the undiluted me. Of course, that's being colored by the fact that you're watching this webcam and It's being colored in any number of ways. This isn't exactly like being in a room with me. But the point is, like, I'm not on right now. I'm not trying to entertain necessarily. And so what I think on is actually more technically should be termed off. You're off. You're turning off so many things about yourself and you're leaving only the things that entertain. And a lot of times that's being unaware. It's kind of like in Blues Clues, right? Where like, you know, they do that interacting with the audience portion where like the host is like, uh, what do you think? Where could the thing be? And then all the kids yell like, it's under the chair or whatever. He's like, what? It's under the chair? Now he knows it's under the chair, but he's a character, so he doesn't know it's under the chair. Um, Apply that logic to everything. In my film Bed, I think I talked about this last time, but like, first of all, if you're a pro wrestling fan, I can very easily explain the dynamic of Bed. I am putting her over in that film. I'm a heel, she's a face. You're supposed to like her because that's how it's structured. That's how the match is structured. Anybody who's into pro wrestling gets it completely. Now I have to dumb it down for everybody who doesn't watch pro wrestling. Because the thing about pro wrestling is it's one of the most advanced art forms that have ever existed. It's a total art form. And to understand pro wrestling is to understand everything better because the terminology makes more sense than most terminology. But let me dumb it down. I wrote Bed, which means I wrote my lines and I wrote the actress's lines. In order for me to write both these lines, even though I am arguing and disagreeing with this other character, I need to understand and relate to the things that both characters are saying. Otherwise, I can't write it. Otherwise, it would suck. Um, and the movie is so effective because you're getting two halves of me, the writer. Spoiler alert, you know? Um, in any one of my films where I'm pitting two people against each other, I don't really do like action movies. It's not like superhero, super villain type stuff. But when two people are disagreeing, let's say, my responsibility as a writer is to understand both sides. My responsibility as an actor is to forget that I understand both sides, and only play my side and only think the things that I think as an actor. As a writer, I have to think all things. I think this is also why, um, not just Jerry Lewis, but like, there's been backlash against Joel Haver, not massive, not like he's not a hated figure, but sometimes people are a little disarmed by the fact that he thinks intelligently about film and is opinionated, and his opinions are derived from how he creates and how he likes to make movies, and he's thought about these things more than anybody other than his peers like me, Dan Lotz, etc. We come to a lot of similar conclusions. We don't agree on everything, but we're in the same fucking ballpark because of the nature of what we do and why we do it and why we make movies in this way that we make them. Um, and so people are used to, watching Joel's stuff and laughing or even crying or just being moved in they're responding to the characters that he presents, both that he plays and both that he allows friends to play. So when he sits down and starts speaking intelligently and considering a lot more than his characters ever have to, people are like, wow, that's a little weird. Joel's a little kooky. I wish he wasn't like that. What they really mean is like they just miss watching a character, which is fine. Like you're part of the audience, You should want to be entertained and you should want to watch characters. But this is something that comes up all the time. I'm sure there's people who hate watching me do this. I'm not doing this for them. I'm actually doing this to educate people and just I think that these videos are good resources um, for those who would wish to use them. But the people who would be like, "I like Cody's movies," or "I like some of his movies, but I would never watch one of these webcams." Fine, great. Anyway, back to character. So the reason why I wrote this down at all was because I was on Reddit and I was, it recommends you things. And it recommended me a post on like the Dax Flame Reddit page, his subreddit, I guess. And somebody was asking, somebody fairly new to him was asking, like, is this a character? Is he playing a character? And I get not triggered, triggered's the wrong word, but like my ears perk up whenever people start talking about character because, um, I mean, what the person thinks is Dax a British guy, you know, some hunky British actor who can put on an American accent and do this completely opposite version of themselves, as so often happens in Hollywood. I remember I watched that movie Beach Rats. I don't know if you've seen that. Kind of came and went, but at the time it was getting a lot of buzz. It took place around Coney Island area, southern part of Brooklyn. And I watched that movie and I was like, wow, that guy from that part of Brooklyn, like really, like he did really well. He's a really good actor. And then like I look it up and like, of course, he's just some British guy who fucking nailed. Like I'm a fucking stickler. Like I liked Honora. Honora's a really good movie. Not my favorite. Sean Baker, not even in my top three. It's a very good movie. I'm stoked it won Best Picture. However, and I'll bring this back to Dax. Don't worry about it. However, Mikey Madison, uh, she didn't sound right. She didn't sound right. Because I've heard those girls my entire fucking life. I know what they're supposed to sound like. She was about 60% there, maybe 55. It just wasn't right. A little stinky. The voice she put on. Um, but that's fine. It's not gonna kill the movie for me. But anyway, the Beach Rats, the British actor name is escaping me. He's been in a bunch of other stuff since then and probably before then. Um, he just nailed like it, for me to think that he was real, that he was really from that area. Oh man. And he's just some Brit. He's like, well, I took this very seriously, like that kind of shit. Everybody's had that experience. You watch some movie and you're like, oh wow, that was really good. And then you see the actor talking. He's like, well, it's like, holy shit, dude. I thought you're from my hometown. What the fuck? All right. Anyway, back to Dax. When they say, is Dax doing a character? What they're imagining is that character comes from doing something completely opposite to who you are. And that's not what character comes from. Character just comes from you're playing this like two-dimensional version of yourself instead of a three-dimensional, fully alive, you know, you version of yourself. But that's what everybody's doing. So yes, Dax is playing a character, but he's using aspects of himself and things that he can naturally, easily do to perform what he's performing. He's entertaining you. These videos aren't accidents. They never have been. And there's been versions of like what he's doing throughout. Like it's changed. It started off as one thing, and as he's gotten older, it's become different incarnations of like that character, of Dax Flame or whatever. Um, but yeah, so like I replied and I not outing him because I don't think it's possible to out a performer. Like, what are we talking about here? But just like I replied to that thing in the subreddit, the Dax Flame subreddit, I was like, character is just, basically what I said already here. About what character is and what character isn't. You're just turning off parts of yourself in order to entertain it all. You know, um, the illusion is that you're giving 100%, 110% even. The reality is that you're giving a smaller, less aware version of yourself, you know? So, yeah, it's what I would say about character too is people who can't act, the reason why they can't act is they can't let go of that part of themselves that knows everything because they think that they will crumble and they think that they will cease to exist if they get rid of that. I'm not saying they think this consciously, but they definitely think it unconsciously. That's what I think hecklers are born from. You know, people who they're in a room and somebody's the center of attention, even if they paid to see them, or at least paid to go to the showcase where they knew people were going to be on a stage, they can't help but shout things out that break the illusion. That's really the problem with hecklers is that they break the illusion. They take the focus away and they're adding things and they think they're helping. I think I'm not going to say every heckler, but a lot of hecklers that I've seen think they're helping. They think they're making the night better. They're not. But a natural born heckler is somebody who finds it very uncomfortable to relinquish that power within themselves or grant it to others temporarily who are performing in front of them. You know, it's the person who can't stop, but it's like you can't do magic for somebody like that because they can't turn off that part of themselves. They can't allow themselves to be fooled and they can't participate properly for the magic to happen. Um, so like people who can't act, you look at them and you don't believe it because uh, they're giving humanness to a unnatural place. Even a realistic movie, even something grounded. I do grounded stuff all the time. I do stuff that people buy as real all the time, but I'm never actually fully being real because it breaks it. You look at it and you're like, well, that's not real. When you're in the realm of art, the unreal is real and the real is unreal, you know? It's like they say truth is stranger than fiction. The second you plop some truth into the fiction, it's just like, I didn't like that part. So, I mean, that's the basic gist. It's like, all right, so like if you want to play a character, let's say you want to make, or let's say I've never done anything. I want to do a Cody Clark character. I have to stop knowing as much as I know and I have to dial it down to what are the most entertaining things for me to not know, you know? In a relationship movie, that might be just somebody who doesn't have all the perspective, but is very passionate and very confused or whatever, and is trying to preserve the relationship that they're in, you know? Um, if I'm in a comedy, it could be somebody who doesn't realize how awkward they're being or like is afraid to let anybody know that they don't know what they're doing at their job when they showed up for work, you know, whatever it is. Something relatable for sure, but like just not as intelligent as the actual human being portraying the character. Anyway, I hope I explained all of this well. I hope anybody was benefited from this. So yeah, Dax is just some British guy. He just does that character. Um that's the thesis of this. No, the point is everybody's doing a character. Joel's doing a character. Everybody's doing a character. I'm doing a character. Everybody's playing something in order for it to be entertaining. If it's not entertaining, you didn't stop being yourself for 2 seconds. You didn't allow yourself to be a little avatar of yourself, you know? Yeah, so if you can't act, that's what's happening. It's worse than not knowing your lines. If anybody can not know their lines. They're great actors that don't know their fucking lines. But you'd be you'd be convinced that they knew, rather you'd be convinced that they were that character. Because it's not really about the words, it's just about the being. It's not a magic power. It's really Yeah, it's not even a special skill. It's how comfortable are you with being, unaware? If you are comfortable being unaware and seeming unaware, you're fine. It's like the saying, "The purpose of art is to stand naked on stage." That's the version of it. That's what you're doing. You are allowing yourself to be to appear to be less aware, sometimes more socially awkward, sometimes whatever the character entails. Uh, you're ganking yourself. You're cutting off limbs. You're making yourself into a character. I don't know. I hope I explained this well enough. I hope this was helpful to anybody. Yeah. If you try it and never succeed, that's why you're succeeding. You accidentally or intentionally, you played a character. All right. Thank you for watching. See ya.